I've known Drake for about 25 years. He and I were hired here at the Home Builders within about a year, a little bit less of each other, which is arguably, Charlie Hales was the lobbyist then, and that was arguably the last sensible thing Hales did, was hiring me and Butch. But we hit it off right out of the gate. He grew up in Newport, I grew up in Central Oregon, and other than dry versus wet experiences growing up, we became the best of friends, and he continues to be a great friend of mine to this day.
So I met Drake over 30 years ago on the port docks down in Newport, crabbing over a couple of beers. Stood out that he was a great guy to spend on the water, spend the afternoon on the water with, and he still is.
I met Drake about 15 years ago. Possibly a little bit longer than that, but about 15 years ago. We've basically been working together in one capacity or another since then, and we've been friends for the bulk of that time. What stood out is obviously that Drake is just a good guy, and who doesn't like Drake Butsch?
I met him at George Lawrence's open house when he first moved into his townhouse in Vancouver. And unfortunately, my first thought about him, actually the next day when I was talking to somebody about him, I remembered someone else, not him. But the next time I saw Drake was at the Builders Ball 12 years ago. And that's where our relationship started. I went as someone else's date and left as his.
I think I've known him my whole life. We used to wrestle a lot just on the carpet, and that's always been like a good memory of my dad, I guess.
Well, I've known Drake a couple of years longer than Marshall, and that's probably about 22 years. What really stood out with me with Drake was his enthusiasm and his zeal for government affairs.
You don't want to take Drake out in the ocean. He doesn't do well with bumps, so I'd leave him on a very flat lake or pond in a tube. Preferably very calm is the best way to leave Drake.
Scott, another person in our group, a friend that was there for the fishing derby, decided that he was going to pick on Drake's catch and say that it was what's called a tule, which I wasn't familiar with that term until that day. But evidently a tule is a salmon, but not really a salmon, and it has a distinct smell that nobody wants to enjoy. Drake is not, he doesn't shake easily. He's not one that you can throw off really easily, but when Scott decided to pick on his catch of the day, that definitely got under his skin.
He went fishing to Montana, one of his dream fishing trips, and he was fishing with a friend of mine who obviously doesn't fish very well either, and Drake kept wondering if he was going to get hooked, and he did. He got hooked right here, and I'm like, every time he tells me that story, I just cringe.
You know, Drake and I have talked about what would happen if, by the sheer madness of the voters, either one of us were elected to office. And I think the one thing you'd want people to do is to just focus on housing. Not affordable housing, not workforce housing, not any subset of housing, but housing. That housing is a priority, and our policies, land use, taxation, you name it, ought to orient around housing as a priority, because it's the foundation for our community, it's the foundation for personal wealth, it's the foundation for healthy schools. I think if Drake were able to just make one thing happen, it would be to have that focus on the part of government officials on housing.
I think it would probably be try and get politicians to tell the truth.
I think what he should do is to go find a nice big flat piece of dirt next to the urban growth boundary and decree that parcel come in after he's had the opportunity to purchase it. So that would be what I would recommend to him.
I was lucky enough to work with Drake when he was on HBA staff, and I was a superintendent in the field at the time, and Drake was the kind of guy I could call in if I had a problem with an inspector or a jurisdiction, and I could call Drake with a problem. Drake would listen to it, although he didn't have a lot of construction experience at the time. He'd call the jurisdiction, research it, talk to other builders, figure out if it was an issue with me, in which case he's very comfortable telling me that, or he would connect with the jurisdiction and look for solutions and bring about real practical solutions to day-to-day problems. And And I think that that is a real strength that we are in danger sometimes of missing as we look at the big strategic overall issues. And I would just hope that, that Drake keeps on recognizing that those day-to-day practical issues of our members are important and something that he's got the ability to solve.
I'm kind of a broken record. I always want to see us do whatever we can to support our government relations stuff. We've obviously been ramping up our efforts to that, but anything else we can throw towards that, if that was Drake's focus, I think he would have a successful term in office. But again, I don't think it's an if, it's a given. He's going to do great in this position.
I understand that Drake's concerned about making mistakes this year, and I can tell you right now, get the threat of the undefeated season out of the way early, just screw something up massively, and then you'll be done for the year and everything will be fine.
I don't think Drake's likely to F up. I think he should probably abandon his plan to switch to Democrat and support Hillary's campaign.
I think Drake really needs to work hard on not screwing up the 2016 Street of Dreams.
Taking on the position is a big responsibility. He's got his kids, he's got his wonderful wife, Darlene, and it's just finding a balance is the biggest thing that he needs to make sure to do, so don't F that up.
That's a tough one. Me moving out of my house, or out of his house. Us moving, let me put it that way, us moving together, selling our house and moving into a new house. That's what he shouldn't F up for me.
Drake's going to be a great president for us. He's a fantastic leader. He really listens to us. He's a believer in the industry, and I think it's pretty great that he's willing to give his time this year to the association, as he always does.
What I really appreciate about Drake and why I think he's going to be a good leader is Drake is a consensus builder. He looks at different viewpoints, he looks at all sides of the issue, and then he goes ahead and makes a decision. Drake is steady Eddie, and all Drake really needs to do to make certain that this is a great year for him is just consistency and continue with his good judgment.
Congratulations, buddy. I'm proud of you.
Only to say thank you to Drake for all of the time and effort that he puts in here. He does a great job. He's always got something intelligent to say, good input, and he's a ton of fun to be around. And also thank you for his friendship that he's offered to me over the number of years that we've known each other.
He's just a great man, and I'm very proud of him and the work that he puts into his job and this voluntary job that he's doing. He's just an incredible, amazing man, and makes me happy every day.
Good luck, Dad.